pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Vietnam Veterans News Podcast. News of interest about Vietnam veterans from a Vietnam veteran. Now, here's your host, Mac Payne.
Clear that throat one more time. This is Mac Payne here with episode 1767 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. News about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran, along with another Vietnam veteran, John Shoemaker. In this episode, John is going to tell us the exciting story about the ambush on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. I guarantee you this story will thrill and excite you. I advise you to sit back and relax, buckle up those seat belts, because in this episode, John is going to take you on a wild and crazy ride right up the Ho Chi Minh Trail. It's going to involve bravery, sacrifice, and a confirmation of the validity of the saying, "The Lord is my shepherd." That will be verified by a dog in this podcast episode. This story John's going to share with you is a follow-up to the story he told you in episode 1765 about the battle at the cornfield. Now, that was a very exciting story, but this one is going to be even a little bit more exciting, in my humble opinion. So do yourself a favor. Get rid of all your distractions. Turn off all your devices. Get rid of all the noisy people in the vicinity. Get the children out of earshot, because John does utilize a little bit of rough language as he tells about what happened out there on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. It is a great story, so without any further ado, John, tell us all about it.
Welcome back. I had just told you in my last episode about the attack we did at a cornfield, a combat assault by helicopter into a cornfield, calling in artillery, and then moving to Cobra gunships to rake this hill where we saw a whole squad or more, a platoon at the least, of NVA, regulars, the attack on that hill. Well, after the attack, which resulted in the capture of a lot of weapons, including some heavy machine guns that we gave to the Major O'Connor of the 2nd Battalion, 1st Infantry, 196th Infantry Brigade. We had to stay that night and await orders in the morning. And after they processed everything, including the documents and whatever we could get from the bodies, that we rolled down the hill, and in some cases we kind of used them to create a berm in front of the foxhole. In any event, the next morning I get the word that I'm going to get my first scout dog. They flew in a scout dog and handler to go out and make my first patrol south of the cornfield. Well, I spoke very briefly with the handler. It turns out it was his first time on an operation. He had only been in country for 2 weeks, but he had been training with this dog for, a year or so. I didn't get his name, nor the dog's name. It just didn't register with me at the time because I was too consumed with getting organized and what was going to be involved in how we were going to do this. And I decided that the dog and the handler would follow behind 6-7 in the line of march. We headed out that afternoon, actually, a little bit later than we wanted. And we went down the hill, and then we started to move through the jungle, which did not have a clear path, so we were cutting. And it was tough going. It took us a couple hours, and then something happened that just amazes me. I can still see it now. We're cutting, and then all of a sudden there was nothing to cut. And we stepped through this hole in the jungle, and we landed on the Ho Chi Minh Trail itself. And I look in both directions on this trail, and it's like a tunnel that was carved through the forest. And this tunnel was wide enough for a deuce and a half, a truck, to move through it easily. And my God, I realized we're on the trail. Oh, Jesus. Now I started thinking of all the possibilities. Fortunately, in training that lieutenants were given, I was sent to Fort Sherman at the Canal Zone for jungle school training. And they had a scenario much like this. If you went into a trail and it opens up, here's what you need to do. So I called up my second squad leader and I said, okay, I want you to continue to cut through the jungle to my right flank. Because as we go forward, it was starting to go up a hill. And to the left would not be reasonable. So the hill would come up to the road and then continue on the other side up still further. So I told the squad leader, you need to go alongside. We'll go slow enough. You cut through so that you cover my right flank. And then I'm going to bring up the dog and the dog handler. And then Larry Gatliff will walk behind the dog handler. And then I will walk. And I'll have a machine gun behind me and Bob Dunphy, the radio man. And then I believe I had the machine gunner behind me. It could be also be that I had Dunphy. In any event, I said, okay, everybody, this is it. You got to keep your head alive because I was always afraid of an ambush. Now, I had gone over in my mind, what else could I do? All the training I got, anticipate what could happen, set your forces right, protect your flank. And fortunately, I had a scout dog, so hopefully they can sniff out the enemy. It was a German Shepherd, beautiful German Shepherd. But it was so hot, and he was just breathing heavily with his tongue hanging out. I can see that. I'm sure he was thirsty as well after cutting through the jungles. And so we took off. Slowly at first, the squad on my right was just out of sight because of the foliage, but I could feel and see as we cut through. As we were continuing down the road, and I'm marveling at the whole situation and what could happen next, as we start up the hill, and okay, well, I see truck marks here. I see cart marks. I see foot marks. And as we are getting closer to the top, all of a sudden, AK-47 fire is coming straight down on us, and I dove for the ground. I can feel those bullets, a bullet that is inches above your helmet. You can actually feel the air move and the vibration as that bullet passes you that close. It's unbelievable. I hit the ground. I heard yelling and screaming. I get my head up, and I see that the scout dog itself, the German Shepherd, jumped off to the side, down over the side of the left side of the road, down the hill, and scrambled screaming. And the scout dog handler, he sticks his head up and he says, I'm shot. And I'm saying, turn over and fire. Just fire. I don't give a shit where you fire. Just fire that goddamn weapon now. I yelled at him, just completely disregarding the fact that he was shot in both legs. And he did. He just rolled over and he put the M16 above his head and just shot in the air until he ran out of bullets. He just kept firing. And in the meantime, Larry Gatliff, the guy in front of me, who was the second in line of march, he fell backwards almost on top of me, and I took a round right through his forehead. Right through the helmet, right through his forehead. He was obviously dead. And then I grabbed the machine gun and I said, we can't let them come down on us, and we try to set up in the road. And then all of a sudden I hear more firing from the right flank, and it turns out that my squad on the right nailed the two MVA that were laying in the road, shot, and then got up and ran, and they were going to run around and attack us from the side. And they were at a full run when they ran into my squad that was obviously alert, and they cut them down. In the meantime, things quieted down. The squad leader came down and said, we got the two guys that shot at you. What happened? And I said, well, we lost the scout dog. I don't know where he is. The handler, I got to get him out of here real quick. He's shot in both legs, and Larry. So with incredible precision, a medevac came in. I will never forget this man who flew this helicopter. I never met him, but at a triple canopy level, 150, at least 200 feet straight up, he found my location and inserted a basket all the way through the vegetation where he couldn't see us, really. He just had the hope we were there. And I'm yelling at him on the radio, and we do see this basket coming down. And I was right exactly dead nuts on. And we loaded up the dog handler first, and I wished him goodbye. And they took him up immediately, and they dropped it again, and I loaded up Larry, and I could see most of his head was gone. And I just felt awful. He was such a good guy. He worked so hard. He would dig your foxhole for you. He was just the greatest young man who just wanted to serve and do a good job. And I lost him. And I was so pissed. So we collected ourselves. We retreated back to the hill. And then the major brought in additional platoons to provide backup for our operations over the next few days. I wrote about this story about the platoon. It was published, though, in the 80s in the Wall Street Journal. After the movie Platoon came out, I said, yeah, well, that's all dramatic and that's all Hollywood, but here's what a real-life platoon's all about. And this would be the only time I would be ambushed and that I would suffer casualties. I never got ambushed again. I was always on the role of ambushing the enemy before they could know where you are and what was happening. But clearly, given all the noise and activity of the days before, they knew we were there. But in any event, that was a day filled with, physical trials. When I asked that squad leader to cut through the jungle, he was not happy. He argued with me, saying, oh, my goodness, we just cut through all this. Now you're asking me to cut, and you're walking on the trail. Well, you guys are going to have it easy. Well, I took no bullshit at that point, and I reminded him to get his ass on that squad, and you move up to my right, because this is right for an ambush. And I know this from the training that I got. Well, he did reluctantly, but I can tell you, after this incident, they didn't question my judgment at that point, both that I could read a map and that I could anticipate an ambush. This gave me incredible credibility as a lieutenant and was honestly so redeeming and validated my interest in saving American lives, because you never know what could have happened or would have happened if I didn't make some of the decisions I made, even though I second-guess myself to this day. Later, in a separate episode, I'll tell you what happened when I met with Larry Gatliff's mother. Thank you very much.
And there you have the amazing story about the ambush on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, told to you by none other than Vietnam veteran John Shoemaker. That was an exciting story of bravery and sacrifice. It was a terrible thing that he lost a good man, Larry Gatliff. But unfortunately, that happens in battle. I'm looking forward to the next episode where John's going to tell us about the meeting he had with Larry Gatliff's mother. Unfortunately, that will probably be a very sad episode, but it is one that must be told so that we will all be aware of the tremendous sacrifice many people made during that war. This is Mike Payne closing out episode 1767 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. Again, as I always do, I thank you so much for coming to listen to these presentations. You are highly encouraged to return again soon and often to listen to more that will be coming your way on this podcast, the Vietnam Veteran News.
How about that? Ain't that a mess?